Um, okay, it seems everything else is in place. It seems we I shouldn't be forgetting about anything. I hope more than anything else. But yeah, basically, let me check. I think. Oh yeah, I think the only problem right now might be the notifications and such, because somehow I do not know why. Um, Twitch itself now, stream elements decided to not work. So yeah, we have that to worry about. Probably if it doesn't happen that we get notified about any particular event. Well, I mean, we have still 2 minutes, so let me try to check that. Meanwhile, mm, stream elements, yeah. Mute, yeah. I think it shouldn't be broken, but just in case if it is broken, I would. Okay, we're back. Can I say that we're back? Are we back? Is the real question, or is this going to once again die in the middle of everything? Um, it seems we're having some problems with that. Huh? It seems, but yeah, I don't really know what to say. Kind of annoying, but anyways, I was still trying to check this because yeah, the biggest problem right now seems to be my whole internet. So we might as well want to keep an eye also on that thing in particular. Mm, but well, let me go check this meanwhile. Okay, we're already here. Here. Okay, we're back. Are we back? Is the real question. Can I say that we're properly back, or should I still preoccupy myself with stuff? Let me see. Okay, wait, what? We have sound, I think. I am still trying to test this. Do we have sound only? Or do we have visuals? Okay, we also have visuals. What? There is a. What? Pog. What? What is a pog? Pog jump. What? What the fuck? What?
Love my daddy, my superhero.
Okay, there it is. It seems to be working. Somehow, uh, regardless of what happened earlier, that it wasn't even trying to work. So yeah, I don't know. Stuff, let's say, simply stuff happening all over the place. Let me now. Let me try to get over here because well, uh, excuse me for taking so long. Um, Today, as always, we have some lessons to learn. We have some content to understand and some stuff to analyze. So yeah, basically, we're going to do that. We're going to spend our time trying to make sense out of more ideas. So yeah, um, let's see what happens and let's see what it ends up being this particular thing so far. Uh, Supposedly the PC is lying. I don't know why, but anyways, there it is, marker creator, and now properly we can move on to this transition, and there it is, video. Wait, let me mute this. There it is. and also activate the audio. And I'm forgetting about anything. I think I am not, right? I think I am not forgetting about anything particular. So let me move to this window, and where is it here? Okay, here we are.
So let's talk about memory today and the fragile power of memory. If memory didn't work, we wouldn't remember anything, we wouldn't learn anything. So we know it has to work reasonably, but it has a number of fragile aspects we'll talk about where, of course, we forget things. But on top of that, it turns out there's ways in which our memories get less accurate and distorted, are not actual records of our experience, but rather our interpretations or our memory of our memory. And we'll talk about experiments that reveal that. So to a large extent, we'll talk about what do we know from scientific research about why we remember some of our lives and why we forget so many other things that we experience. And a version of the way that people sometimes think about it is, in what sense is memory like a camera, that every experience you have is stored in your mind somewhere? We all have the experience, perhaps, that something will remind you of something you haven't thought about for days, weeks, or years, right? And you go, oh, well, they must be all stored there. I just need the right cue or the right path to get that memory. So that's one version of memory. Everything is in us, recorded. Sometimes we can get to it, sometimes we can't. Another version is the way to think about your memory. It's kind of like a punch bowl. You put in some milk, and then you put in some orange juice and swirl it around, and then you put in some Coca-Cola and swirl it around. And it's not a desirable drink that you have in your bowl, but you can no more get the specific milk or the specific orange juice or the specific Coke because they're all mixed together. And it's memory more like that. As life goes on, things get mixed in, and the raw memory is never recoverable from the mixture of subsequent experiences, thoughts, and feelings.
I mean, in a sense, I understand the analogy, but at the same time, memories doesn't really completely, let's say, fiddle with one another, because one memory can exist without the necessity of having another one that triggers it, at least in the sense of you can know, for example, mm, the periodic tables, one of the most basic things. You can know about them, but you could also not remember how is it that you learned about them. You can, through time, remember simply the tools themselves, for example, but not remember where is it that, or who was it that taught you about how do you utilize them in your life, because they aren't related in a sense, and they aren't even more um, mix or necessarily, yeah, added one to the other, as they do not possess the quality of needing to be mixed, let's say.
So we'll bring the same perspective a little bit. Bottom-up memory might be, really the video camera, if we had it, an actual recording of what we hear, what we see, what we experience out there in the world. Top-down processes are the mental things we have in our minds that let us interpret what's out there, concepts, expectations. Also, it turns out you'll see that subsequent experiences go back and change memories from prior times. And which of these things, the bottom-up original experience or the top-down interpretation, grows over time to constitute your memory? So we can have a very simple model of memory. A flash for a moment. I'll give you an example of how people test this. A sensory memory, very tiny, moments only. Short-term memory that you can rehearse in some cases. Somebody tells you a number and you can repeat it over and over again. You have that capacity. And then long-term memory, things that last for a long time. You can define these things many different ways. When we talk about the brain organization of human memory, we'll say that short-term memory probably lasts seconds, and everything after that is long-term memory. Now, of course, if you just experience something, you remember it better. If it's a week, a month, a year, 5 years from now, most likely less better, right? So time passes. But we think almost all of that is in the context of long-term memory capacities of your mind.
Okay, I think, yeah, it makes sense, the idea that creating enough short memories about something ends up making, let's see, this, having enough short memory or short-term memories about something ends up making long-term memories. But I wouldn't see why is there necessarily a connection between long term and short term in the sense of if they are feeding back one another or something like that. But okay, probably they are related because you can extract particular parts basically of a long term memory for the sake of remembering it. and even more, you can acquire knowledge and similar stuff in your memories based on the capacity of analyzing them that we have inside of ourselves, let's say.
But we think almost all of that is in the context of long-term memory capacities of your mind. So here's a kind of experiment. I won't really, we'll do a couple of exercises at your seat, but this I'm just going to give you a feeling because you have to, this would require millisecond timing to do correctly. But the way they approached this sensory memory, the flash of memory, the just capturing for a moment what's out there, is something like this. So imagine your job is to report back the letters that you see. Okay. Yeah, you're getting a number of them. Okay, all right. So that method would be, you just did what's called the whole report method. Tell me everything you saw. They did another approach, which is present letters. And then just as it disappeared, they would get a tone, a high, medium, or low tone. And that would tell them which row to report, the top row, the middle row, or the bottom row, depending on the tone they heard just after the flash, immediately after the flash. Does that make sense? Okay? It's gone, but the tone is telling you which one to report. And the striking finding on this was this. If they showed you 12 letters like you just saw and said, tell me everything you see, people could give you about 4 letters back. Maybe you had that experience, about 4 letters accurately. If they gave you the letters, they flashed them, then you got the tone, or one row only, you got about 3 letters correct. Now this is interesting. The letters are gone, but it's kind of like as if the photograph of your memory is fading, but if you put your attention somewhere, you can still pull it back, but just a little bit of it. So, okay? Because here you get 4 out of 12, here you get 3 out of 12, almost the same, because your attention can zoom in on that fading mental image of what you just saw. So there's much is sensed, but attention only selects a little bit to be remembered, okay? So that's
Yeah, I will say a possible explanation that I find on on this when I think about it is the idea itself of having to actively pay attention to something makes you more aware of what happened, let's say, because in a sense the reality itself of this, if you do not know what is it that you have to observe, you might as well be correct as it is shown here. You might as well get 4 letters because at the end of the day, you do not know which ones you should pay attention to, but at the very least, you saw them on one hand. While on the other, if you have a tool like this that tells you which place you should be putting your attention into, the difference or the main difference ends up being that you now have the capacity of only focusing on something in particular. But also, I would even say, mm, I don't think this is really correlated. Like, if you know, or if you saw 3 or 4 letters, it is more like, okay, let's say like this. When you also are forced to focus into something, you lose a more broader view on things. Because even if they are 60% correct, let's say 3 letters instead of 4, um, in the case of here being only 37% correct, it also means that you only have to watch one row and you still fail to retain as much letters as you do when you can observe the whole picture. Even in the case of you watching, let's say, every single picture through time, and even more, observing every single letter in a whole group. Because it also obviously happens that, okay, let's add also to this mix the idea or the notion that was taught to us some lessons ago about we have a finite amount of vision when we are reading. So unless you can read incredibly fast the stuff that appears in front of you, you will only have the chance of observing it for 1 second or two. And when you have that thing into play, you also notice, I think, that your attention itself might not catch every single thing. And when even more, you have now to deal with the weight of this, of only paying attention to one part, your attention mm, on the memory itself becomes even blurrier. It might seem like it works, but at the same time, it ends up giving you some losses when you are trying to deal with it this way, I will say. But at the same time, probably if you can properly say which letters did you observe mm, with a higher rate, it isn't so much of a concern because I will apply this concept to if you have to study 300 topics for a test without knowing which one of those 300 topics is going to appear on the test itself that will only consist, let's say, at best of 30 of those, you only will study so much stuff. And from all of that stuff, you will only get a 10% applied to your test. When you have things like that happening, you also might want to study the most important things. And when you know what is important, you can guide yourself around in an easier manner or mm, have an easier time studying in the case of studies, obviously. And it will represent even more a thing that is enjoyable and a thing that can also carry a sense of accessibility because you know what is it that you have to pay attention and you know and based on the prior knowledge, as it was said on the other thing, on the other slide, because you have also prior knowledge, you can properly put together a more correct view of things, and not just simply try to find which one is the most important and which one is the least important one. I would say, but if you were to give to those same students the capacity of knowing that if they study everything, they are going to get tested about every single thing. The quality of the things that they end up learning goes back to this. You will know more, even if you will overall have less knowledge, let's say, quote unquote less. Because in reality, this 37% doesn't really represent a negative thing. Rather, it might even be considered an incredibly good one. Because you can also take into account, and even more, you can also say that you were able to retain inside of you more than the average, or not more than the average, more than if you were to do it like this, with a focused amount of things that are important, let's say. But yeah, I mean, also probably it is too much of a way to put into anybody that is trying to learn anything. So yeah, I don't know. Continue, basically. Um, yeah.
This very first moment of memory. But one of the more impressive lines of research is the next moment, short-term memory, keeping in mind something in your mind briefly. And one of the most striking aspects of human short-term memory is it's limited in how much it can hold. And across a tremendous range of materials, words, letters, shapes, tones, and so on, you can hold approximately 7 plus or minus 2 chunks of information. Limited short-term memory. So now I need somebody who's willing at their chair to do something. You will have to, I'm going to read some numbers and ask you to repeat them back, but your eyes will need to be closed, and it'll be fairly challenging.
Copyright.
All right, thank you very much. All right. Okay, so, close your eyes, and here we go. Ready? Keep your eyes closed. Repeat after me. 6, 1. When I'm done, I'm sorry, yeah. Ready? 6, 1, 9, 4. Repeat.
6, 1, 9, 4.
Right, ready? 3, 7, 8, 5, 2. Repeat.
3, 7, 8, 5, 2.
Great. Ready? 9, 6, 5, 2, 8, 3. Repeat.
9, 6, 5, 2, 8, 3.
Right.
Okay, let's see. Probably it is going to be something like, how many times did I say this number? Or what was the first pattern that I gave you?
4, 2, 6, 9, 8, 5, 1. Repeat.
4, 2, 6, 9, 8, 5, 1.
Very good. Ready? 8, 1, 6, 3, 7, 2, 4, 9. Repeat.
8, 1, 6, 7, 4, 2, 1, 9.
Okay, perfect. I'll open your eyes. Thank you very much. So you did terrific. You got 4 right, 5 right, 6 right, 7 right, 8 right. You got it mostly right. You just reversed 1 or 2. Okay? 7 plus or minus 2. Doesn't matter how smart you are, how advanced you are. There used to be some confusions about this because they would say kids in different countries have different limits. Okay, and they say, "Oh, our country's smarter than your country." Okay, and people, "Our educational system is better than your educational system." It turned out that all of that got equated around the world if you counted up the number of syllables that are in the digits. The real unit of memory here are syllables. Okay, so in English, it's mostly. Most of the numbers are one syllable. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 are all one syllable. 7 gets 2, right? 8 is one syllable, 9 is one syllable. In some other languages, the words that go with the digits are 2 syllables. And the real unit is, so countries that have 2 syllables, they had lower spans because, not because they were dumber or had a worse education system, it's because the real unit is number of syllables. Because you're hearing it, it's language. Okay, is that right? Okay. So around the world, it's just a fundamental capacity of the human mind is that you're limited to this kinds of stuff. So how do we get around that? Why are we not always barely able to do anything, okay, with very small amounts of information? So it's just a constraint of our minds. It's because background prior knowledge, things you know before you have to learn something, has a very powerful effect. It allows you for the information to be retained in memory, but it has a double-edged sword, which is kind of a theme in today. As much as it helps you remember things, it can fool you into misremembering things. And let me give you a concrete example. So you can put chess displays in front of people who are either beginning chess players, have played for a while, or are masters. And they're not going to play. They're going to look at it. The pieces will be swept to the side, and then they have to put all the pieces back out of memory into the same location where they just saw it. They know that's going to happen, right? So it's a memory test. Here's the pieces, take a look. The examiner sweeps the pieces to the side, and you put them back as well as you can. You see it, it gets swept to the side, and you reproduce it from memory, what you just saw. And here's the performance of master players and beginner players in this case. So people who have played a lot of chess and people who play very little chess. It's better to be high, the number of correct pieces. And there's 2 kinds of displays. In one kind of displays, what we call the normal displays, those are ones that could really have happened in a game. They were kind of reasonable configurations of pieces. The random displays are pieces all over the place in a configuration that you're not likely to see in a real game of chess. Equal number of pieces. And look what happens. The best performance are master players who see a real normal chess configuration. Here are the players who are beginners. And look at the worst performances, the chess masters who see a random setup. So what do you guess is happening? Yeah.
A lot memorize games and positions, so they're used to seeing those patterns, and when they see a random configuration, you can't recreate it as you do.
Right, so the people who play chess a lot have a lot of configurations in their mind, background knowledge. They use that background knowledge of what a chess array means. Somebody's in trouble, somebody's winning, something interesting is happening in this corner. That knowledge helps them escape the boundaries of 7 plus or minus 2. And they do a lot better than the beginners, for whom it doesn't mean much. It's just a bunch of stuff out there, hard to remember. But what happens here when the pieces are random? The chess masters are making mistakes because they're putting the pieces in the places they ought to be, rather than the places they perversely were randomly located. Okay, if you're a chess player, you don't like that random board, right? So it doesn't feel right. But they're trying to be accurate. But now they're misplacing their memory for what they actually saw with their mental model of what ought to be out there. Okay, now the players who are not so good, you don't see much of a difference between these lines. They don't understand when it's random. They don't understand when it's organized. It's just a bunch of pieces. Is that okay? So the double edge of background knowledge. Background knowledge lets you escape the bounds of limited short-term memory, but at a cost of sometimes substituting in for the actual experience you had.
Okay, I mean, also something that might be interesting is the possibility, because it doesn't really have that much else to say by itself. The idea of, yeah, what you know limits you when you experience things that are completely random, as it is said here. But it also might be interesting to try and analyze the possibility of, okay, everything might or might not be the most interesting stuff to analyze, yeah? But if we take that as something that might be true, and also mix into this idea the possibility of how much can you keep learning and keep expanding your horizon of knowledge for the sake of having an even better understanding, and in this particular case, an even better grasp of the reality that is in front of you, how much of that you could put together so that even these errors might not happen to you. Because something that kind of was not said here, the teacher said something like, there are going to be masters, average players, and completely newcomers into chess. On one hand, while on the other, what ended up happening was that it just appeared, or it just had masters, and I think it was beginners or something like that. So maybe into even higher levels of knowledge, because let's say the possibility not only of having masters but also testing those who could be considered the based on the chess game itself might even give the possibility of having an even better understanding about this. Because maybe into higher echelons of knowledge and higher levels of ability or higher echelons of ability, you might find that they also have so much more tools about chess that they can face a test like this without so many problems. Because I will say like this, maybe in a non-ordinary way, the Dunning-Kruger effect takes place here because they know that they know, and when they face the knowledge about their own capacity of really extracting what is it that they are observing into what they already know, they also find a blockage inside of their minds trying to make sense out of it. Let's say, while in reality, somebody who might be a complete master, because they also know that they lack so much knowledge, also has the capacity of facing the reality itself of, okay, I do not need to be overwhelmed by my, let's say, my capacity or my incapacity of absorbing everything that I am observing. So maybe I do not think it is that necessary, but maybe observing those even higher people in the hierarchy of chess might give a possibility of observing more, something like that, or extracting also if it is really something that every single master gets or end up going through. Let's say.
Okay, so we'll try this. Organize, and people use the word chunking. This is the way in which you use your background knowledge to get big pieces of information stored that are better than you'd think from short-term memory limits. So here's a quick one. Ready? Oh, I need a volunteer, actually. Not too bad. Oh, tough volunteer day. You're mad at me about the exam. Okay, thank you. All right. Okay, ready? What were the letters? Okay, how about these ones? All right. You see, same letters. It's just that now you see the chunks, and you can map them onto long-term memory more easily. Okay. Plus, I showed it longer. Okay. Anybody else want to try something like this? Thank you. Okay, ready? Here we go. Ready? Oops, so this is showing that. What letters do you see? Ready? Okay. Now I'm going to let your background knowledge triumph. Ready? All right. Same letters, right? But you can use your back. It's the same letters. The others. You don't believe me. All right. Same letters. All it is this one. Nothing, your background knowledge is useless. Your knowledge of words, your knowledge of the alphabet, useless. Same information in a sense, same number of letters, same identity of letters, but now your background knowledge is powerful. Okay. Okay. I need somebody else. One more volunteer. Thank you. All right, ready? I'm going to show you a sentence. This is meant to be hard. The first one. Don't worry about it. Okay. Here we go. Can you tell me what they were?
Your car, bridge.
That's pretty good. Okay. Let me show you another equal number of words. Ready? Go. Okay, what is it? Yeah. You would do better. Okay, I know, it's hard to pull these things off. Well, anyway, so 13 words, people would do pretty miserably at this, although you did very well. A lot better at this, because again, you can use your background knowledge of what does a sentence mean, what's the organic syntax, all your background knowledge can be applied. Again, the power of background knowledge is immense. I can tell you that if you go work somewhere, or if you're working in a lab now, or if you're working in any place, you might be impressed by people who are older than you and what they know and what they can learn and pick up. It's background knowledge, background knowledge, background knowledge. It lets you quickly understand an idea because you can interpret it from prior ideas you know. Quickly read a paper because you slot it into prior things you know. Background knowledge is incredibly powerful to let you discover the signal and get a lot of the specific information in any kind of information out there.
Okay, there it is. I think it also happens that not simply the concept of background knowledge, but the idea itself of, I will say, neuroplasticity plays a role here. Because when you reach a point in which you know so much about something that you can adapt any new coming idea into what you already have interpreted to be true, probably, you can more easily integrate that into anything else. While on the other hand, if you never realized that it was necessary for you to try and interact with any particular thing that you are trying to create, you might as well never have the chance of properly, let's say, um, developing connections between concepts and even more in the idea itself, as it is said here, of adapting one thing to the other one and allowing yourself to integrate what was already known into something new, if you never had those prior knowledges, you will never have the chance of exploring in a more deeper manner, I would say. But also, the biggest kind of good thing that might be interesting to extract from all of this is even more if you realize that you need to have prior knowledge about anything if you want to keep succeeding in learning about that particular topic even more, then you can notice how much more you learn and how much more you absorb by simply learning more, let's say. Because it feedbacks in that sense. I think now I understand a little bit more. It fits back into itself that when you learn about something, you can also solidify the new concepts that are going to appear into the whole structure of knowledge that you possess inside of your mental map regarding any particular concept or inside of your whole brain regarding everything. So yeah, I think it is very, I would even say, amazing at this point. Nothing, nothing to really criticize about so far.
So,
Yeah,
um, oh, Tyler, I left with you this time, sorry. So we're going to do a quick memory test. You will do it at your own seat. It's voluntary, but I will ask you to share a little bit of information. But this is for everybody now, not for one person to be put on the spot. So what I'm going to do is read you a list of words. Wait till the end, and when I say recall, write down the words from your memory. Okay? So I'll wait for a moment if you get a pencil or pen or something.
wow.
Okay. I see a few people still getting stuff. Okay. All right. Ready? Here comes the word. So just listen. Don't write. That would be too easy, right? I'll say recall and then write them down. Here we go. Mailbox, sardine, shotgun, peacock, credit, detail, flicker, airline, spinach, clarinet, recall. Okay. Here are the answers. Okay. As you look at this list, put your hand up if you got all 10. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. Thank you. All right. So now think about this for a moment. We said 7 plus or minus 2. When the words are presented in a random, unorganized list like this, you're pretty much back to short-term memory limits in many senses. Not completely, but in many ways. So if you were to tell a person on the street, I mean, I have to say 2 things about you guys, which is certainly true and complementary, okay? Most of you, if you're somewhere between 18 and 25, you're at your peak memory capacity for the rest of your life. You will never do better. You will never do better for rote learning than you are right now. There's a ton of research that shows that. You will never do better for rote learning than about 18 to 25, okay? After that, it's downhill, okay? You get other benefits, salaries go up a little bit. You get authority, that's a nice one. But rote memory, you're at the top. Not only are you at the top, but you are an incredibly selected academically achieving group, right? You're MIT undergraduates, right? You're incredibly selected to be the top of the top in many senses for learning between 18 to 25, as far as MIT can possibly figure this out, right? Okay? You are our hope for the future, right? If you guys can't fix global warming, we're in trouble, all right? So you can't get 10 words? Come on. We have big problems to solve, right? It's a capacity of the human mind that we just can't do about more than this, right? It's just amazing how limited rote memory is without other things. But there's a little bit more that we can tell. How many of you got mailbox and sardine? Fair number of hands? Okay. How many of you got spinach and clarinet? The last 2 words. Fair number of hands. How many of you got credit and detail? Way fewer hands. And that's what happens on a well-controlled experiment. So this is correct. High is correct. This is what order the word was in. The first word you heard, say the 5th. This experiment's 15 words. You can see that people are, here's their performance. 2 things are noteworthy. People do best for the first couple of words, and sometimes they do best for the last couple of words. So here's 3 delays. These delays are 0 seconds what we did, You get the list, you immediately write them down and recall them verbally. That's zero, immediate. Or I wait 10 seconds and then say, now recall. Or I wait a half minute and say, now recall. Now, for memory for the first two items, what's called the primacy effect, it doesn't matter. In all three conditions, those are the best to remembered words on average for most of the experiment, okay? And people think that's a signature of long-term memory. You can get those one or two words, and then you start to get overwhelmed, okay, in long-term memory. Here, you only get the boost for the last couple of words if there's 0-second delay. If there's 10 seconds or 30 seconds delay, no boost. So people interpret this recency effect, superior memory for the last couple of words, as a signature of short-term memory that lasts only seconds. And so within a simple experiment, you can see long-term memory influences, short-term memory influences, and short-term is very short-term. It's just seconds. Now,
Okay, here, I think also something that gets not said that much is if you were to give people the possibility of having different patterns applied into the words that you're saying for the sake of this test, you might as well find that the capacities they have for remembering everything might as well end up varying even more because by itself, the chance and even more, the reality of the ways in which our memory interacts with everything, as it was said before, by the teacher itself, when you have things that fall into a pattern and make sense into a whole group and not simply inside of themselves, let's say, when you have something like that happening, instead of simply worrying yourself or not, if this makes sense or not, based on a complete randomness, when you have something like that happening, you can even more get a better result. But if you have completely unorganized anything trying to be put together into, at the very least here, into a recalled memory, you might as well fail more or not have such an easy time because it also has the property of not being proper knowledge that you can absorb anywhere, let's say, because it doesn't make sense. And it, by the property of being random, it even tells almost your brain that it doesn't have any real priority over any other thing that might as well have the real chance of being interesting, I think. So yeah, basically that.
Ebbinghaus is one of the founders of experimental studies of memory, and he was heroic. I mean, he would just train himself. He used nonsense syllables because he wanted to get rid of a lot of background stuff, rote memory. And he would learn thousands of these and then test himself and score himself honestly, okay? He did the bulk of the work on himself, and he discovered something that's pretty simple, but that's has had a huge effect. So how well do you do since you learned something, all in long-term memory? If you're tested immediately, 100% of it's a small list and you studied a lot. 20 minutes later, an hour later, 9 hours later, you can see the steep forgetting up until about 10 hours, and then it sort of hangs in there. A forgetting curve of long-term memory that we, immediately afterwards we're pretty good. Then there's a lot of forgetting in 20 minutes and for a day, and then things hang in there. This shaped asymptotic curve of forgetting. Okay, now, here's another mission for you. You need a pencil or just your fingers will work fine either way. You're going to see a list of words. Some will be in uppercase, some will be in lowercase, capital letters, uppercase, okay. Your job as you see them from top to bottom is tap your left hand for each word that's in the capital letter and your right hand for each word that's a lowercase letter. Is that okay? So if the first word is capital, you tap left. If the second word is lowercase, you tap right. And you just tap, tap, tap until you get to the bottom, and then it will go. You ready? You ready to help me out? Here we go. Thank you very much. Here we go. Excellent. All right. What were the words? Okay, you might be impressed that even though they were right in front of you, and even though you were looking whether they were upper and lowercase, so you really saw them, if you don't bring the relevant background knowledge to remembering it, which is the meaning of words most of the time, our memory is pretty hideous, okay? All right, let's try another one. Now, the trick is gone a little bit, so we're gonna do another, it's a little bit of a setup, but I can tell you it's scientifically true, okay? So now it's the same idea. You're gonna see words, but think about, you're gonna read the word. If it's a living thing, like a dog, tap the left hand. If it's a non-living thing, like a chair, the right hand. Ready? You did awesome, thanks, here we go. Okay. Does it feel like you would remember the words better? Okay. Does it feel like you would? Okay. So here's what we did. The first list is you thought about the appearance of the word in memory. That's called shallow encoding, just if it's upper lowercase, and typically that leads to pretty poor memory. If you think about the meaning of the word, we think that optimizes memory. People call it deep encoding, and it leads to better memory. And in a well-controlled experiment, now here we had a certain order, and you knew there was a trick. But if you have a well-controlled experiment, here's what you find. If you just think about the appearance of the word, here's how well you do, pretty low. If you see the word once or twice. And if we look over here at the meaning of the word, you can see one thought about the meaning of the word is better than two presentations thinking about the appearance. And two thoughts about the meaning of the word in your memory is really excellent. Yeah, question.
Think about that, get confused by the uppercase versus lowercase and the living versus non-living.
Was it confusing to do one then the other? It was a little bit, right? Yeah.
Is that supposed to make you remember it better? Do you have to think that hard?
No, usually, well, to the extent it draws you to think of, the question is the confusion of doing the two different tasks help you out? So roughly speaking, the answer is to the extent it draws your attention more to the word, yes. To the extent you're sitting there going, okay, was it uppercase or was it living? And this is weirding me out. It's going to hurt you because your mind is filled with those thoughts, not looking at what's in front of you. Is that okay? Yeah. So, but we can do it, in these demonstrations, they're a little kludgy. Here's a fun one, the effective context. So this is how they did the experiment. You could do it different ways, but this is a fun one. They actually went in the United Kingdom to the shoreline, and they had people put on those old-style diving helmets, the old big helmets, and you go under the water with the big hose in front of you to your air source. And they had them learn word lists, like you were looking at word lists, on the land or underwater. So underwater, they're hearing the word, okay. And then they were tested for those on the land or in the water. And here's the core message was, you do better remembering information if you're tested in the same situation in which you learned it. What we see here is if you, here's the words learned underwater, you're better if you tested underwater instead of going on the land. If you learn the word on the land, you're better off if you're tested on the land than if you go underwater. The context in which you learn something helps you, right? Studying in the water, underwater and tested underwater, you do better than studying underwater and going on land, or vice versa. Being in the same room, same time of day, all those things help you a little bit to bring a memory back, because those are parts of the memory, is the context in which you experience it. Another approach that people have taken, this is about organization. They'll present a set of words like this, ask people to try to remember them. Pretty big list, But if you take the same words and do that, same words people remember a lot better because there's an organization that helps you, your background knowledge of what is a career, what is housework, what is food.
I mean, also something that plays, I don't know if the biggest role, but a big role is the side of when you are trying to organize ideas, and if you are not in the same situations in which you created those ideas, or if you are trying to recall ideas, sorry, if you are not in the same situation in which you created those ideas, you might as well not have such an easy time trying to recall anything particular. And even more, not only that, if you add into the whole mix that, what I wanted to say was, if you add into the whole mix of, on the sake of learning, and on the route of acquiring knowledge, and even more testing it afterwards, how much of an influence it is to learn inside of a school or to learn outside of a school. And not only to learn inside and outside, but also to give kids homework, I will say. Because when you are allowing the minds of the children who are so incredibly capable of absorbing anything in a more completely scarce way, as it is shown here, because in your house you might as well get distracted, you might as well not have such a necessity for paying attention to the tasks that are given to you and anything like that. When you have those different factors affecting you, and even more, let's say, playing a role in the whole development of your own understanding of the realities that surround you, when you have all of those things playing a big role on your existence, how is it that you can try to remain calm, let's say? Or at the very least, if it isn't a real problem that you can't remain properly absorbing anything, how is it that you can mm, correctly learn anything and show to others that you have learned about it? Because I will say also something that gets kind of missed here is if you really are learning about something or not when you don't have the capacity of recalling those memories. I will say, because I will argue probably if you really understood and because of that same reason learned about anything, you shouldn't have any particular problem dealing with those things, no? On one hand. So if you really find yourself struggling, it shouldn't mean that you are doing bad, kind of the opposite. It only represents the reality of you, let's say, facing problems, because everything else is almost against you in the sense of you are trying to learn the what is it? The settings in which you are placed do not allow you to learn properly, and even more, the different parts of the act itself that is to learn can't be completely fulfilled. Therefore, you end up not simply failing, but rather having your overall performance diminish. Therefore, you might as well succeed, but you might also not succeed as much as someone who is on an even bigger course, I would say, or with an even higher capacity of learning about anything. Because think about it like this: if you weren't to be given the chance of properly learning, why would you expect not only you but also others to learn? Let's say. So yeah, I basically think that, but I don't know. I don't know. It seems also kind of depressing because you have to accept the reality of when you try to learn about things, you might fail. Not because what you're trying to learn is impossible to learn, but also because so many things are playing a role in your process of learning that if so, not even so many, if some things go badly, it also means that your whole process of learning will get negatively affected.
All contribute to helping your memory for these items be better. Um, so let's think about forgetting. We know something from last year, we forgot it. There's at least two ideas that people have said, what's the core reason we forget things? One of them is like passive. Well, I haven't used it for a while. You know, uh, it's just not available anymore because time has passed, not been used, not available. That's passive forgetting. The other way to think about why we forget is not that it's a passive loss of knowledge, but that experiences you have after that moment when you learn something will go back and write over and muddy and confuse your memory for the original event. It's active interference of subsequent experience. It's not passive withering. Other stuff is getting in your head that's writing over and modifying the original memory, and the original memory is never there again. And people have talked about it in two different directions that you can think about this. One of them is what they call proactive interference, where things from before mess up your learning on something, or retroactive interference. You already have the memory, and now new things mess you up and write over the memory. So
Well, I mean, yeah, this was kind of talked about on a previous class. You can learn about things on you, or you can have a hard time trying to learn about anything because the quality of learning itself is also affected by what you need to learn. And if what you're inputting in your mind has nothing to do with anything else, then why would your mind try to retain that information on one side or in the other if what you're observing right now is completely wrong compared to what you already have cemented in your brain as the reality and as properly useful knowledge, why would it also make sense to retain it? I think. But I wouldn't be preoccupied if it is or not a quality of learning. I think. I mean, it is there, yes, but at the same time, it doesn't really represent a problem to the degree to which one can't act upon learning, let's say. Mm, so yeah, I think that's it. I think there is nothing else for me to say on this regard. But well, also, I I think that that's enough for today because I need to leave. So sadly, we're going to leave it over here. We're going to finish the lesson on this place. I think, yeah, in a sense, it is interesting to keep trying to understand how it is that we can learn, but I will even say kind of sad it is to notice that because so many, as I said before, because so many things play a role in the proper act itself for learning, we need to be wary about so many particular things being okay and giving us the possibility or not of learning. We might as well have one of the hardest times, if not the hardest, when we try to learn about anything. So yeah, I don't think it is really negative, but simply something that might call or might makes us focus into how is it that we are learning, because it also can also be connected to what I said before, um, or what we talked not before the last stream. Basically, you can enjoy learning, and if, for example, here, if so many things are going wrong for you to learn, how will you find an interest in learning? When in reality, the act itself of learning should be something that is only brought up by all the parts of the process being something that you can enjoy, let's say. But yeah, I don't think it is that bad still. So well, let me add a marker, slash marker, and well, with that, I think we are properly done today so far, as I don't really have any more else to add for today, I will say. So yeah, as always, thanks for being here. Thanks for the chance. Thanks for paying attention, for looking, for watching the bot, for everything. I, as always, it is a very big pleasure to do this. So yeah, we might as well take a break, live, rest, properly hydrate ourselves, and whenever it happens in the future, we're going to be back to here. But for now, we deserve to, as I said before, take a break, get some mental clarity. And yeah, thanks for everything. Remember to stay safe, stay hydrated, and yeah, goodbye. Stop the stream.